I keep disappearing off the camera here because I'm here alone for the first time in like 5 years. Erica's in London ahead of us.
Oh, she went ahead.
She did. She's got an AHA concert tonight.
Another one.
Yes.
Yeah, didn't you guys just see them?
We did, and it was such a good experience that she was like, I want to go see them again immediately. I was like, okay, well, we got airline miles. I said, and she goes through all the whole calendar. She's like, you're going to London, right? I was like, well, Saturday or Sunday, yeah. She goes, well, I'm going to go a few days early. And I'm like, do I have any choice in this matter? She goes, no, and I'm going to use your airline miles.
I'm going to take, for Valentine's Day, I'm going to take myself to London to see AHA. See you.
Right, yeah. I'm going to spend it with another man.
Later. I mean, have you seen his triceps? I'd spend Valentine's Day with him too. It's impressive.
Unbelievable.
Especially for such a skinny guy.
And then I get my weekend, like, I'm like, oh, great, I got a like bachelor weekend here, except I'm teaching a training class. I'm teaching a class Wednesday through Friday. I can't get drunk every day. What fun is this?
Yeah, only every other day.
Yeah, max. Yeah, every 6 hours. And then I'm like, oh, this is great. I can order all the food I would never ordinarily get. No, she cooked me like 3 days worth of food and left it in the fridge with instructions. Oh. She's like, eat this in the dinners because it's too carb loaded. You're going to get sleepy if you try to eat it. I'm like, oh, now I feel guilty. I can't go out and have tequila and tacos now.
Yes, you can.
I know. I
just throw the food out.
It's true. Anybody hungry? Anybody else hungry?
No, the same thing will happen. Like sometimes my wife will take our daughter and she'll like go hang out with her parents for a weekend or a night or something, and she'll be like, "Well, I left plenty of food in the fridge. Like there's like this is laid out, this is laid out," and I'm like, yep, cool. It'll still be there when you get back.
Oh, God bless her. Oh, it's so sweet, but yeah, no.
You're very helpful, but I want to.
Yes. And she's going to kill me when, like, if she saw me eating, I don't even microwave anything. I get it literally out of the fridge and just start eating.
How can you eat that cold? I'm like, I just want to eat.
It'll warm up when it gets in.
Yeah. Chewing's for.
Let's see. Ricardo asks, if the data file has no more space to grow, wow, this is so good. How long will SQL Server keep continuing to process transactions as long as the log file has plenty of disk? Will it go down when the log is full, up to the next checkpoint? When exactly will it fail?
Is this an MCS? Is this like an exam question? What are those asterisks?
That's so cool. I don't think any of us would ever test it. My guess is you would keep running until you needed to add a page in the data file.
Yeah.
Which you could do inserts, updates, and deletes even. The deletes may be making enough space on some pages that matter. Maybe inserts don't require a new page. Updates may not. But if you're depending on knowing the exact time it's going to go down, you're probably screwed to begin with.
Yeah. It's going to be a short amount of time, I suspect.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to go well.
I don't even think it'll be up long enough to get the answer.
But that'll be a fun thing to test because you could just like create a small like 1 meg data file, cap the size, and then start banging away on like transactions and see how long it takes. I mean, why you got to ask us? I don't want to go do that demo now.
Well, and if you do it, put some time in between the loops. Don't just go like, well, 1 equals 1, because this whole thing's going to go down like a house of cards. Sounds like the kind of thing we usually do. And you see us do stuff like that during Dell DBA days, but not always. It's pretty rare.
I just don't want to do demos that don't have a query plan anymore. They're hard.
You're in love with query plans.
I just like perf, and I can't.
Amen. That's me with availability groups. Like, okay, I'm like, oh, it's over there. I know how it works. I'm kind of done with that piece now. It's lovely. I like it. Same thing with clustering. Like, it's over there. I'm going to be over here writing query demos. Michael asks, why is there no backwards compatibility for SQL Server backups? Why can't I back up a database from a SQL 2012 instance and then restore it on a 2008 R2 instance?
Things change, man. All sorts of stuff changes. I guess the way I think of it is like, like the amount of fundamental changes that take place from version to version, both, internally to resource DB, master, the DMVs, the way SQL just does things, where it looks for things. There's just no sense in having a database turn back time just so you can restore it to an older version. I totally get why they don't do that. It doesn't seem fair to you because you have a weird environment where you need to downgrade databases, but I get why they don't want to like switch databases back to something else. That sounds like a nightmare.
It's like you have to ask questions like, have you ever written software that just works once and then you want it to work with previous versions? I mean, it gets super hard. I take a look at Windows and my mind is blown that you could actually install software that was written 20 years ago and it probably will work.
Yeah.
That's insane. It's just insane. And you can't even open up QuickBooks like in the previous version without having to upgrade to the new version. I mean,
I'm so amazed that you can take a database from like SQL Server 2005 and restore it to 2014 or 2016 and it just works and you don't have to do any steps. The magic just happens. It's phenomenal.
But if you think about like phone operating systems, which are even worse, where like you have Android or you have an iPhone, there are apps that don't work because you upgraded Android. Like there are apps that stop functioning because they made such fundamental changes to the operating system that like those apps don't function anymore. They don't do things the same way. So like like what Richie was saying, you can install something on Windows from 20 years ago that still works. But you can be crap out of luck on phone OS that's like 6 months ahead of whatever app you installed. Yeah. So compatibility is hard.
And that's a philosophy, right? When you're writing software, it's like, yeah, we're going to forget everything that's old, and it's just new, and you just need to upgrade to a new version, and that's it. And that's just a philosophy. Where Windows was a complete opposite. So I know we need everything to work in previous versions. It's just really hard to do it.
That, is someone who, works on scripts that have to work across a wide variety of things. As soon as we don't have to support an older version anymore, I want constant forward momentum. I don't want to have to keep thinking about other stuff. I have it on my calendar for 2019 when 08 and 08R2 are pulled because I am not doing one more version check.
Amen. Yeah, I think it's also going to catch people by surprise as they start playing around with Azure SQL DB managed instances. So managed instances are roughly equivalent to always-on availability groups. You can upload a database into there. It just kind of works, and they manage it for you. But, man, heads up, if you ever want to get your data back out, you're going to be SSIS or BCP or yep.
There is no SQL Server version physically that is the same as the Azure DB version.
Yeah. Landon says, I know these questions come up a lot, but deploying SQL Server on VMs with shared SAN storage, is it worth separating the data logs and tempdb files onto their own disks like traditional best practices advise? What you want to do is, go ahead.
Nope, you go.
She can say no fast enough. What you want to do is check with your SAN vendor because there are cases with some SANs where they will handle caching differently, for example, and they may require you to have the logs on separate drives for different ways of doing caching. But it is going to be different for every make and model of SAN. Generally speaking, it's not going to be the performance difference that gets you across the finish line.
I have a different take on it. So I like to still split them up regardless so that if, especially by database even, so that if one database it blows out their log, it doesn't cause storage issues for other ones. So by separating them in mount points or drives, I can avoid production issues that some databases might cause.
And if it's not by database, I also like it by business unit too. Like if you got a bunch of accounting databases on the server and they all have their own use pattern, then you group them together. Let's see, Chris asks, hey, I have a task where I need to update millions of rows in a table. I wrote a script that will batch these updates into smaller 1,000 rows updates. Sometimes when I run it, it's smoking fast. Other times it's completely slow. When it's slow, I stop it, count to 3, then hit run again, and it goes back to being smoking fast. I'm not seeing any blocking, and my database is in simple recovery model. Any ideas on what to do when it sometimes just runs slow?
So is it slow from like the outset, or does it slow down after a few batches? Would I guess my question. Don't blame fragmentation.
He says from the outset. I'm guessing bad query plan. Well, no, because stopping it and counting to 3 wouldn't make a difference on that. So what would you
blocking?
He said he's not seeing any blocking.
Oh, no blocking. Oh yeah, he did say that. Thanks, Chris.
Gotta check the weights. What is the query weighted on?
And how would you do that?
Well, I would do it with SB Who is active.
I'm fine with that.
Eric might get a little upset though.
No, I use SB Who is active for lots of stuff. SB Who is active is superior in its own special ways that I am not trying to compete with. Blitz Who does stuff and it grabs stuff from new DMVs that SB Who is active doesn't touch, and that's our niche with that. We look at stuff that Adam's, I don't know, too busy running Python to mess with.
And one of the things I love about SP Blitz Who over SP Who is active is it'll also show you session weights much easier. So you don't just see the current weight, you see all kinds of other weights. So he followed up with, he thinks it's usually CX packet, but definitely check SP Blitz Who because it'll show you the session weights altogether, which may be a lot other than CX packet. You
know what happens to me sometimes when I run things as a loop is I forget that I have query plans turned on, and that just messes me out because it makes a query plan for each iteration of the loop. And that's just no fun.
There you go. So let's see. Amigos Pablo says, what do you think about CheckDB? Should I do it on a maintenance task or should I do it with T-SQL and log the output?
I don't care how you do it, just do it. I'm not a fan of maintenance plans at all, so I won't use those no matter what. But I'm okay with maintenance plans, just not for my servers, but other people's servers. I'm okay with them for backups and CheckDB. I'm not okay with them for index maintenance. Use Ola Hallengren's Index Optimize.
It's totally free, ola.hallengren.com, Swiss Army knife, all kinds of cool stuff.
The only thing to add is make sure that you are logging the outputs so that if CheckDB ever does fail, you don't want to have to run CheckDB manually in a query window to get the output. So have that output go to a file so that you can take a look at it. Sometimes the failures are benign, but sometimes it's going to mean database corruption. And you do not want to have to run CheckDB when you encounter corruption again, because you might be talking about a 10 terabyte database and that could take hours.
Speaking of which, Daryl says, I haven't mastered replication yet. I've scripted it's like a support group here. I've scripted out my mess and successfully run it and added articles with the GUI. My vendor says, oh, don't use the GUI, only script it and never touch it. He says he only runs snapshot when the article isn't flagged. Can you help me find the column for an article not flagged for snapshot?
I have no idea what any of that meant, but I'm a fan of the GUI when it comes to replication. In my last job, they were fond of scripting it. So luckily, when I arrived, they already had everything scripted, and I would just change what I needed to. I just followed their template. The previous job, my boss would always say, you should start scripting this stuff. I was like, but the GUI works fine here. I supported replication for many years, but I didn't love it, so I never cared to figure out the scripting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it works. I like, if you know it implodes all the time. So like I had one job where the replication just always imploded. So we scripted out and we could just go run it whenever it broke. But God, if you're in a situation that bad, how about you fix it, so that it doesn't break all the time? We couldn't be bothered. Ron asks, do y'all have any best practices for using full text indexes?
Yeah, it's called Elasticsearch.
Yeah, Elasticsearch. Yeah, exactly.
Don't use it.
What's the difference between Elasticsearch and SQL Server? And
functionality.
Oh, Richie, go ahead.
I don't know. I always felt that Elasticsearch, you could just do so much more. You can do more with the querying. You could do a heck of a lot more with the functionality it actually brings out. Remember, full text search really hasn't been updated in years and years and years and years. And so it's pretty basic. I mean, if you just want to do a simple search, that's fine. But with Elasticsearch, you could create these crazy search strings and really dig into your data and find, insane stuff. The only problem is that you do have to move your data from SQL Server into Elasticsearch, put the index on top of that. So if you have something that's, you want to keep secure, you'll have to think about how that's going to work. But other than that, it's designed for searching. That is what it's designed to do. And so it's the best tool out there for doing that.
How much does it cost?
Oh,
free 99.
Yeah, free is me.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's funny. We were on the phone with we were on the phone with a client. They were like, "Oh, well, I've rolled a poor man's version of Elasticsearch in SQL Server." And I'm like, "Well, Elasticsearch is free. It is the poor man's version. It doesn't get any more like poor man free. You can just go download it. It's right there for you."
No,
we must have had that same. That must be the client that we shared because I remember hearing that.
Yeah.
you know, running the poor man's version of Elasticsearch, which is what, Apache Solar, which they were, you know, branched off the same thing. You know, I mean,
yeah,
I don't know.
you know, back when I used to support relativity, they had the option to create full text indexes. And I mean, like, leaving aside the fact that setting off a crawl on like a several terabyte table kind of sucked, but I really just hated dealing with the search queries that would come out of that, like with the contains table. Like, no one was ever quite sure what to do to get what results back. And, you know, internal, or rather, as a part of the application, they also use DT search, and they also sometimes use Elasticsearch for things. So, like, obviously, like, you know, even they had been pulling away a little bit, or like giving people alternatives, because full text just wasn't good for all kinds of searches.
Yeah, exactly.
What I really like the best about Elasticsearch is that it's outside of SQL Server, so you're not wasting all your RAM and other resources on these giant full text catalogs. You're putting it outside into a product that was meant for searching that kind of thing.
We should probably suffix it to say, too, if you're doing like home development of an app that's 5 to 10 gigs in size and it's never going to hit 100 gigs, then sure, full text indexing is probably fine, but you don't need any best practices. It's just going to work. But beyond that, then that's when you start asking questions. Brian asks an interesting one. Have you ever seen differential backups take longer, like 10 times longer, when the full original backup was striped as opposed to done to a single file? It's a no for me.
No for me.
All right. I think you got a unicorn there.
Yeah.
Post it.
I mean, are there unit tests that you could run against it? I don't know.
Yeah, if you could reproduce it, I mean, like create a database 10 gigs in size, fill it with random junk data, and do the tests back and forth, showing it's immediately different, and reproduce it on a couple of different SQL servers, then submit it as a question to dba.stackexchange.com, and people will upvote the hell out of that, because if it's reproducible, that'll be an awesome bug to find.
I mean, honestly, the only time I've ever seen diffs take longer is when there was more diff to diff. I don't think the backup striping ever had anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Choose these DBAs, choose diff.
Oh yeah.
There you go. I like it.
Oh.
I found myself in a weird situation last week. Just once. Well, I mean, one day. One relevant instance of a weird situation last week where, the client was doing like big data warehousey stuff, and they wanted some replication of the data. And I actually recommended differential shipping to them because they're all in simple recovery. And there was just no reason for them to switch to full and start doing log backup. So I was just like, look, you can take a diff, because they were doing nightly fulls with snapshots. So I was just like, you could just take these diffs at like 4 to 6 hour increments and be okay. They're going to be big, but you can do it. And it might beat the pants off of you having to like learn transaction log backups at this late place in your developer career.
I also just want to point out for people who are watching the video, you see how my webcam is doing this weird thing where it wraps around? I can point in one side and my finger comes out the other side. No, this has happened all morning with my training webcast. I noticed it when I was like doing jazz hands and they started coming out the other side. I was like, what the hell is going on here?
What have you done to the Matrix?
I know. What I wanted to do is I wanted to get over far enough that I could scratch my own ear, but I couldn't quite make it work.
I thought it was like, is somebody in there with him? What the hell's going on over there?
Eric is trying to squishing his head.
I will crush your head. Sri asks, do we need to have 2 IP addresses for a SQL server?
For what?
Need to? No.
Terry says, we have a SQL Server 2012, and it's, hold on. Let me read the, they have a SQL Server 2012, but somebody installed the 2008 management objects and the 2008 setup files. Our security team is asking us to remove them. I've Googled and found that people ran into issues. What are your thoughts? Well, you know what I do? I tell your security team to remove them. They're so confident in how this works.
Yeah. And if they're requiring you to do this, I'm not sure what kind of security risk there is for having them. I'm sure there's something that it's just not aware of. I would require that the company gives me a new server so I can move everything over to this. I would not be doing this on the existing production server.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, log ship or database mirror over to it or something. But yeah, that's a little sketchy. Sri asks, do maintenance plans transaction log backups truncate the logs once the log backup finishes?
Well, any transaction log backup will truncate the log internally, not externally.
As long as, like, there are some things that will cause it not to.
Right, like if you have replication or whatever other weird log reuse weight, or like an open transaction that's keeping things all big and bloaty. But and generally, I think if you're expecting the size of the file to physically shrink after a transaction log backup, you're going to be waiting a very long time because that's just not what happens. The transaction log grows as it needs to accommodate active stuff, and then internally marks space for reuse when transaction log backups happen, apart from like what we talked about if there's a weird log reuse issue, like an open transaction or replication or whatever else shows up in that sys.databases log reuse weight desk.
It's funny. Things you never think you'd learn is like, as a kid or you're getting into the industry, you're like, what are all these cryptic DMV names? And now we're like, it's over in log sys.databases, log reuse weight desk.
Yeah. Things that I'm trying to forget so that I can learn other things. There's only so much space in here. I'm just trying to like flush some of this stuff out so I can get new things in there.
Terry says, follows up with, that's a good one. It isn't how it works. Security's in charge and the DBAs are dirt. So yes, they're requiring it and we have to do it. And no, we can't have a new server. I have a great consulting line for this. I'm just like, go ahead and show me how it's done. I don't quite understand. I'm like, follow this. No, I've never done that before. I'm not comfortable with that. It's a risk for me. I'm not comfortable with it.
Honestly, I was going to say that's a production box. If you want me to make changes to that, I want something to test those changes on before I push them live into production. I don't want to just willy-nilly install stuff that might mess up connectivity, whatever, to my server, because then I have to troubleshoot that on top of your stupid security issue that's probably non-existent. And
then also, if you've Googled and found that other people have run into issues doing this needs to be documented, and that they need to, the security team needs to sign off, and the CTO needs to sign off that this is a potential known issue to cause problems, and you're requiring me to do it in production.
And start a support call with Microsoft. It's $500. I was just like, sure, I'll do it as long as you start a support call with Microsoft and they walk me through it. Microsoft will be like, no.
Like, you have to be on the call with me when that happens.
Yeah.
Because if you're asking me to do this thing that I can't do, you can't just physically change that server during business hours. I mean, you can't just YOLO uninstall crap on. So why would you do that to yourself? I don't know.
Anon Emus says, we have a developer who's trying to use OA create processes. This just keeps getting better. The more that I read, it gets even better. For making bots to send notifications about certain jobs running across multiple servers using linked servers. I think that's probably the single sentence with the most bad ideas I've seen in it in quite some time. We cannot get SA permissions. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Yes. Whoever made that decision.
Whoever is
should listen more to
very smart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You should buy them a beer.
I have a blog post today that's it's how to suck at database administration. And in the comments, I added something today that said, because someone was saying you need to talk about the people skills, the personal skills of senior DBAs are very lacking out there. And one of the issues on my reviews at past jobs is that people would say these are third-party reviews. People would say she needs to have a softer way of saying no. And for this here, I would say no. End of story. Done. I don't care what my review is going to say. This is just dumb.
A softer way of saying no? Hell no? I mean, I don't understand.
I know.
And the horse you rode in on.
Yeah, they would say that even if the answer is no, she should have have more words go around it, make it sound nicer, and it still be no in the end. It's like, what?
That sunshine? It should go up the rear. That's where I want you to blow it up.
Okay, here's 2 words. No.
You smell great today. No.
Good news. Look, I'm going to give you some good news, though. Between you and me, I'm sure you can do that in one line of PowerShell. So just don't sweat.
even Eric could do it in one line.
That's it. One line.
Yeah,
There's no unit tests around that PowerShell code. I'm sorry.
None of us, I think it's universal, none of us support doing that. We're not on for that.
Especially because all those SP create OA things are deprecated. They're in the dust. I remember reading old SQL, some workbench articles on Simple Talk where like someone would
Yes.
use like SPOA create to do all this crazy stuff, and I'd look at it and be like, "Are you sure? Like, why would you make a database do that?"
I remember stumbling across stuff like that at some point when I was way young, and I'm trying to figure out, all right, well, it's on the web. It must work. This must,
Yeah.
someone had to get approval to post this, right?
Yeah, where it's like creating Excel files and then destroying Excel files and doing all this other stuff. I'm like this just seems rather daft. It has to be. I learned that word because we're going to bits. By the way, daft is an English word.
Very
That's
nice.
brilliant.
After I got done converting my fat ass to kilos, I learned how to say daft in English.
Richie's been telling me that I should check out Ear Grey tea. That was what he was
Ear Grey.
talking about.
Yeah,
Ear Grey,
Favorite.
Earl Grey.
my favorite. It's great.
Really good. Terry
I will
follows.
never
up.
Live that typo down. That's exactly right.
I'm going to serve him some. I'm going to be like, here's your Ear Grey
Yeah.
tea.
Is it the Van Gogh flavor? Is that,
Nice. Terry follows up with, you guys are great. Now I'm ticked at myself for not thinking of all those things. It's how everything works anytime you talk to anybody else. Everyone else seems to have all the good ideas. Let's see. Mahesh says, my transaction log has grown too large, like 200 gigs. And as I dig into it, it seems like some internal checkpoint is stuck with sleep bpool flush. Any idea how to clear the transaction log and complete a checkpoint? The database is in simple recovery model.
Ooh, look in your error log for messages that say flush cache.
Gosh.
Because if you have messages in there that say like there's messages that'll be like flush cache waited X amount of seconds to push X amount of pages to disk. It's a really nasty like kind of I/O issue. You also probably see like if you search for flush cache and also search for 15 seconds, 15 seconds, because you're likely running into nasty I/O issues where the buffer pool can't flush stuff from memory to disk fast enough.
So while you guys were answering a previous question, I started researching that weight stat. And so, yes, I was keeping myself busy. So Paul Randall said that you may see this as a top weight if a checkpoint is blocked for some reason. And he doesn't mention slow I/O, but he says an example of this would be trying to start a data backup, which does perform a checkpoint, while a database is being encrypted for TDE, transparent data encryption.
Happens to the best of us.
Yes, I suspect that maybe, if this isn't happening during your full backup, that you may have you said simple recovery model. So do you have TDE and is a full backup occurring at the same time?
Or is someone trying to rotate the keys, which requires it to re-encrypt the whole database, and you can't take a backup while that's happening? All right, the last question we'll take, Tom asks, can you give a brief overview of the query store feature in
Quick rundown?
2016?
oh wait, I know this, right? So this is when you go and you take a look at queries and you select which one to buy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And
You bid on
you install it on your machine. Yeah. It's
Like
like
an
an
onion.
Nobody uses it.
You especially want to focus on the one that has a little robot hand and it's a claw and it picks up queries and drops them off to you. Just make sure you pick the right one, not the truncate table one. Yeah. No, none of us are serious. So brief over. You know what you do? Okay, here you go. Go to groupby.org, not as in group purchase, but groupby.org, and search for Query Store on there. And there's been a couple of sessions on how Query Store works. Check those out, and you can watch like 90-minute free video on there about how it works and see demos of it too as well.
And then if you want to go explore your query store, I have a store procedure called SP Blitz Query Store, which allows you to do very SP Blitz cachy things on your query store queries. End of story. Sentence. Period.
I was waiting for more. I'm like,
And then comes the robot claw. And make sure that you're fully patched too, because there's a lot of known issues around Query Store that got better with Service Pack 1, Cumulative Update 6, or whatever it was. So.
Standard Edition couldn't flush plans out of it and couldn't clear it out. It grew astronomically.
I'm looking at a SP Blitz rule right now for Query Store cleanup.
Ooh, look at that.
Ooh, I like it.
Thanks, Richie.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us this week. And we won't see you next week on Office Hours because we're 3 of the 4 of us are going to the Kingdom of United. Richie staying home and holding fort down in Miami, but the rest of us are going to be at SQL Bits in London. So we will see y'all in 2 weeks. Adios, everybody.